Please take out your Bibles. Open them up to the Gospel of Luke, chapter 22. Luke, chapter 22. We're going to be reading verses 31 through 34. Pretty short reading here, but it's awfully packed full. It's on page 158 if you're using one of these journals. So Luke, chapter 22, verses 31 through 34. And this is what it says. This is Jesus speaking, and just so you remember, we're still at the Last Supper, sitting around the table. Simon, Simon, behold, Satan demanded to have you that he might sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned again, strengthen your brothers. Peter said to him, Lord, I'm ready to go with you both to prison and to death. Jesus said, I tell you, Peter, the rooster will not crow this day until you deny me 3 times. So you deny 3 times that you know me. Wow, what a passage. This is a chilling event when you think about what is really going on here. Imagine sitting there at the Last Supper. They've just gone through the whole Passover dinner and all of that. You've just finished debating and arguing amongst yourselves over which of you is the greatest. And Jesus shows who is the greatest by getting down on his hands and knees and washing the feet of everyone there, even the traitor. Having settled that, Jesus does reassure the disciples that they will have a place of leadership in his kingdom, but then, and it will come as kind of a cost of that too, but then he turns and makes this bone-chilling declaration. Simon, Simon, behold, Satan demanded to have you that he might sift you like wheat. Imagine hearing that. I mean, Satan himself, we talked about that a little bit with Judas, when Satan entered into Judas, how it wasn't just a demon, it was Satan himself. This is Satan himself saying, Peter, I want Peter. Not just a common demon. And you think about the darkest, scariest movie, the kind that I hope you don't watch, the kind that I don't watch. This is scarier. Because it's real. And this is actually Satan asking for you. And anyway, he didn't even ask here. If you notice, the word there is what? He didn't ask. What did Satan do? Demanded. Satan demanded to have you. Wow, it sounds like a lot like the start of the story of Job, if you read the book of Job, which is a tough read, it really is. But when God is sitting there on his throne and all of the angels are coming there before him, and Satan comes there with the angels. And there's people that think that Satan can't go to heaven right now, but he can. And he goes up there. It's a lot of where he spends his time accusing us, as we'll see through this today. But Satan comes walking up, making his way through the crowd. And God asks Satan where he's been and what he's been doing, like he didn't already know. That's the thing. God already does know. He asks people like that all the time. Adam, where are you? He knew he's in the bush. But he wants us to come forward and tell him. I heard one preacher, and I love this because he came up with the best answer. And it comes from one of the Old Testament prophets. I think it's Zechariah. But whenever God asked him something, his answer was always, Lord, you know. So if God asks you a question, just say, Lord, you know. What have you been doing? You know. You know. But here he asks Satan where he's been and what he's been doing. And Satan says, and I'm paraphrasing, you know, I've been around, I've been here, there, doing a little this, doing a little that. And God says to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? For there's no one like him on the earth. A blameless and upright man, fearing God and turning away from evil. Can you imagine God bragging about you in heaven like that? I'm like, right. God bragging about me. But there's a price that comes with that, isn't there? Because that drew attention to him. It put a target on Job when God did that. But God says, have you considered this guy over here? And Satan came unglued. Satan replies to God there. He says, does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge about him and his house and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands and his possessions and have increased the land. But put forth your hand now and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. That's what Satan does. He's called the accuser of the brethren. He's saying to God, here paraphrasing again, come on, God, give me 3 seconds with him in the ring and I'll show you what he's really made of. I'll leave it to you to read the rest of the story of Job in the first couple chapters and see what happened to him after that point. But that is really what is going on here. And Satan is so intent on it that he is making demands on God. I demand Peter. This shows us something about Satan. We know he's powerful. We know he's brilliant. But he's not all powerful, and he cannot do anything without God's permission. He is 100% under the thumb of God. They are not equal in any way. They're not even close. They're universes apart, and Satan cannot do anything without permission. So he came to get permission to attack Job. Now he is coming to God to get permission to have at the disciples. And if you notice, I said the disciples, plural, because Luke used the plural form of the word you there. When he says Satan has demanded you, it's plural. We don't have that in the English language. Well, not in the proper English anyway. It gets kind of confusing. We should have something, like in the South, they say y'all. And I heard the other, all y'all. Now, if you understand the grammar of Texas, y'all can be even just a couple, but if it's you, it's all y'all, if it's everybody, right? Some places out east and stuff, you use guys, you use, even on the east side of the state of Michigan, you hear people say use. We had a lady in our old neighborhood where I grew up, and I think she was out of Tennessee, but she would say yuns. You don't hear that often, but she'd come out and yell at us kids, doing something in her yard, and she said, "Yuns, get out of here," So there's all kinds of things, but in the proper English, we do not have a real plural for you. Well, in the Greek they did, and oddly, and even some of your footnotes on your Bibles might point that out, Luke used that. So the Greek literally reads this: Satan has demanded to have all of you, to sift you like wheat. He wants to destroy all of you. He wants to feel your shattered pieces falling between his fingers like grains of wheat. But especially you, Peter. That's scary. He wants all of you, but you, in particular, he has singled you out. Interestingly, too, I notice here that Jesus did not call Peter by his new name, which is Peter. What was his old name? Simon. He calls him Simon here. Did you notice that? Simon, Simon. His parents named him Simon. In the Old Testament would have been Simeon. So he's named after one of the 12 tribes of Israel. And Jesus then later named him Peter, if you remember. If you look at Matthew 16:18, this is Peter's great declaration. But as he is doing that, there's this verse here that gets a lot of confusion in our world. And it says, this is Jesus speaking, "I also say to you that you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overpower it." A lot of people misinterpret that to think that that was Jesus ordaining Peter to be the Pope. It's not. In no way is Peter being ordained to be the Pope there. I mean, that's just false. The term didn't even come into use until years later, and there were several people called popes. There's one in Alexandria back then. There's one in Byzantium. There was one in Rome. They were all over the place. It just meant Papa. It was a term of respect, and it kind of got formalized and solidified under Pope Gregory I, but that didn't happen until 590. Year 590. That's a long ways from where Peter was here. So Jesus in no way is saying that Peter is the Pope at that point. That's just the historical truth of it. But I do want to caution something here, because we, especially as Baptists, often go too far the other way. We are so afraid of being Catholic that we will go to all kinds of explanations and all kinds of hoops that we will jump through to say, oh, that's not what he's saying. We can't run too far the other way on that either. There is something, we have to get to what I would say the common sense understanding of what Jesus said. There was no notion of a pope at that time. But Peter was standing there, and Jesus says to Peter, "You are Peter, you, and on this rock I will build my church." And the name Peter means what? Rock. So we go through all kinds of gymnastics in that. He is actually pointing to Jesus. Was Peter not foundational in the establishment of the church? Read the book of Acts. Who preached the first sermon of the church on the day of Pentecost when 3,000 people heard about the resurrection and accepted Christ and joined the church? Who was it? Second sermon of the church. 5,000 people came to Christ like a week or so late. 8,000 people in weeks. Isn't that incredible? All in the city of Jerusalem. Who preached that one? Peter. He was so influential in the church. The point isn't that Peter is elevated into something there. It is a fact. He was a part of it. I think it's the plain and simple truth there. God used Peter. God uses people. And he happened to be talking to one of them at that time. And that is just how he has built the churches on people, and Peter was a part of that. And Jesus said to him there, though, this is the thing, and the gates of Hades will not overpower it, not overpower the church. But as I read this chapter, as I prepared for this, I thought, well, tonight, here at the Last Supper, I think Hades was going to give it everything it had to try and derail the church before it was even born. Satan was bringing everything he had against them, especially against Peter. It's like Satan realized what was going on in the cosmos on the most holy and sacred night when Jesus would go to the cross, and he knew he couldn't stop Jesus, so he decided to hit whom? His disciples, and especially Peter. Why Peter? Because who was more influential out of the 12 disciples than Peter? You take the lead, you take the flak. And that's the way it goes. You target the leaders so that you can demoralize everybody else. When you stand out, you become a target. And Peter was the most prominent out of the 12 disciples. Not because he was ordained to be, probably because he had the biggest mouth and he was the first one to act, but Peter was usually the first one moving and everybody else followed him. He's always the first person to open his mouth and give an answer, and sometimes he was right. He is one of only 2 people that I've ever read about that walked on water. Got to give him some credit, too. He didn't go very far, but he walked on water a lot further than I have or you have. Even if you don't think that it is saying what it sounds like it is saying to us, you got to remember this, too. When Jesus said that to Peter, Satan was listening. Satan is not all-knowing. We heard what he heard, and it sure sounded a lot like Jesus was saying that Peter was going to be a key part in establishing his church on the earth. And so I think Satan may have marked him at that time and said, got to do something about this guy. John was the one who was the closest to Jesus, right? He was his closest friend and everything like that. He has that nickname, the one whom Jesus loved. I bet the other disciples loved that, He was the one closest relationally, but Peter was the one who stood out most prominent and most visible out of all the disciples. So who are you going to hit the hardest? One interesting thing about Jesus calling Peter by his old name too, the name Simon, or Simeon in the Old Testament, is what that name means. The name Simon means listen. Listen. It comes from the Hebrew word Shema. Do you know what the Shema is? How many know what the Shema is? Well, you're obviously not Jewish then, because you would if you were. It's a sacred prayer that the Jews say all the time. The Shema, it's a sacred prayer given to them in Deuteronomy 6, verses 4 and 5. You'll recognize when I say it. It says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is..." Oh, you do know it. "And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might." That's Deuteronomy 6, 4, and 5. The prayer is called the Shema because it starts out with the word hear or listen. Not only does he use his old name, which means listen, but he repeats it. He says, "Simon, Simon." Do you know what it means in these ancient languages, since they didn't have punctuation marks, when they put 2 words back to back like that? It's like putting an exclamation point there. Simon, Simon. It means listen up. So Jesus using Peter's name, which means listen or hear, and Jesus repeating it, which means listen up, what do you think Jesus is trying to say to Peter at that moment? Listen up, Peter. I need your attention. I've got to have your full attention right now, Peter. Listen to me. Look at me. This is really important, Peter. Get over the foot washing thing. Focus. And listen to me. What did Jesus want Peter to listen to? The fact that Satan, the most evil being in the universe, the highest of the angels, fallen angels especially, wanted to shred him that night? I'm sure that's partially what he wanted. Wanted Peter to pay attention to that. Be aware of what's coming at you. It's just a scary thing. I remember years ago when I had a boss call me in his office at one of my engineering jobs, and we had just gotten a new GM in the company, and the engineering manager called me into his office. He said, "Don, I don't know why, but the new guy's painted a target on your back." He said, "I can't think of a thing you've done. I don't know what it is, but watch your back. He's coming for you." It's like, oh, have a good day yourself. Fortunately, by the grace of God, I outlasted that GM and never found out. What was it? Something? He just said, "I don't like that guy. Maybe it's the hair, all my long curly locks that he was jealous of or something. I don't know." But it's not a great feeling, and that's exactly what he's telling Peter. Watch your back. Something is coming. But I think what Jesus really wanted Peter to listen to when he said that is to what he said next. And look at verse 32. "But I have prayed for you, that your faith may not fail, and when you have turned again, strengthen your brothers." Listen, Peter. You're going to go through it all tonight. But I want you to hear this part. Number one, I have prayed for you. How would it feel for you to know that Jesus was praying for you? He is. He is. So we should feel that way anyways. Turn with me to Hebrews 7:25. Hebrews 7:25. Listen to this. "Therefore, he is able to save forever," that's Jesus, "those who draw near to God through him, since he always lives to" what? "Make intercession for them." He is praying for you day and night and day. Jesus is turning to the Father, interceding for you night and day and night. Jesus is praying for you. You walk through this world knowing that. You are not alone. You have not escaped his gaze. He is interceding for you day and night and day. And Satan is coming before the throne of God, accusing you. He's doing that all the time. That's what he does. Did you see what he did today? Did you see what she did? Did you see them take that? Did you see what they said about that person? Did you see that? And Jesus speaks up every time and says, "I died for him. I died for her. I already paid for that." You have nothing to say here, Satan. Jesus is doing that for you night and day and night, no matter what. And it will never fail. He ever lives to do that, forever. Turn with me to Zechariah 3, verses 1 through 7. Toward the end of the Old Testament, this is a really neat passage. I want you to look at this. It's a great story, a true story. I hate to use the word story when we're talking about the Bible. You know, it is a story, but it's a true story. The temple has just been rebuilt after Babylon destroyed it. The new high priest has come in there, and they're consecrating the temple and stuff. And God allows the prophet Zechariah to see into the spiritual realm, into the other dimension, and see what's really going on. And this is what it says. "Then he," that's God, "showed me Joshua, the high priest, standing before the angel of the Lord," which is Jesus, "and Satan standing at his right hand accusing him." So Joshua is here, and Satan is right next to him accusing him. This is what Satan does. "And the Lord said to Satan, 'The Lord rebuke you, Satan. Indeed, the Lord who has chosen Jerusalem rebuke you. Is this not a brand from the fire? This guy's red hot, Satan, is what he's saying. Now Joshua was clothed, I love this picture. Joshua was clothed with filthy garments and standing before the angel. I don't think that's really in the temple. I think that's the spiritual realm. It looked like he had dirty garments on. And he spoke and said to those who were standing before him, remove the filthy garments from him. And again he said, see, I have taken away your iniquity from you, and will clothe you with festal robes. Then I said, let them put a clean turban on his head. So they put a clean turban on his head and clothed him with garments while the angel of the Lord was standing by. And the angel of the Lord admonished Joshua, saying, thus says the Lord of hosts, if you will walk in my ways, if you will perform my service, then you will also govern my house and also have charge over my courts, and I will grant you free access among these who are standing here. Amazing glimpse into what really goes on in our world that we don't see. Joshua the high priest, he's standing in the temple as far as he can see, just like we're standing in a room here. But there's things going on in this other dimension that we can't see, and he couldn't see it. But because in reality, he's there, and this multidimensional thing is going on where Joshua is at the same time in the throne room of God. You don't realize how many times when you worship God, you think, I'm in this room full of people, but there is a sense where you might as well just be in the throne room of God because of the way his universe works, and you are worshiping God. And Satan's accusing him. But God rebukes the accuser, and then he takes Joshua. What's interesting, the Old Testament name Joshua is what in the New Testament? Jesus. And it means Yahweh is salvation. And he comes here in that name, and he's standing there before the throne of God in these filthy clothes, and God gives him all new, clean clothes and a promise. This is going on in your life all the time, and you don't even know it. God is on your side. Satan is accusing you. And God is rebuking him and restoring you to cleanness and giving you the promise of his faithfulness all the time. You just don't know it. So number one, Jesus is defending you. Jesus is praying for you day and night. Number two, out of this thing Jesus said here, by the words Jesus said here, it's clear that Peter is going to fail. Jesus didn't say, now, if you fail, when you come back, do this, did he? What did he say? He just goes right to the solution, says, when you have turned back. Well, if you're going to turn back, guess what? It means you failed. You're going to do it, Peter. You are not going to make it through this unscathed. It's the implication. You will fail, and then you will come back. This is going to happen. And Peter wasn't ready to accept that, so he objected. He says down there, he says, Lord, I'm ready to go with you both prison and death. I'm not going to deny you, Lord. I'm not going to do that. I will die before I do that. Matthew tells us, though, I want you to see this, because we always focus on Peter, right? And Matthew tells us that all the other disciples chimed in and said, because Matthew records this, all the disciples said the same thing. Peter's just first. He's always first. But all the others chimed in and said, yes, Jesus will die too. And to show how the leader out front takes most of the flack, spoiler here, we all know that Peter denied Jesus how many times? 3. We know it happened. But not everyone knows that all the other disciples did the same thing, do they? Mark 50. And they all left him and fled. Once again, Peter's just first. They all did it. They all did the exact same thing. But I also remember first time I saw The Passion of the Christ. You remember that? When you saw it first? And I saw that scene where Peter did that, and I saw what he was facing and all that, and I said, Jesus, I would have done the same thing. I'm no better. And neither were they. They all did it. Number 3, Peter would fail, but his faith would not. And that's the key. Peter would fail, but his faith would not. And that is what Jesus prayed for. Because you start out and you're reading this, well, if Jesus prayed for you, you should be okay, right? I mean, if Jesus prays for me, I'm going to make it. But Jesus didn't pray that he wouldn't fail, did he? He said, but I have prayed for you, verse 33, look at that, so that your faith may not fail. That's what he prayed for. Even though Peter would fail and would deny Jesus 3 times in Jesus' darkest hour, there would be something inside Peter that would survive it. This little glimmer of faith, a string of faith that would keep Peter connected to Jesus even when he failed. He would not lose everything. One thing to hold on to. He would not be doomed to hell. You would think he would, because you think about it, Jesus told the disciples 2 different times, if you deny me before men, I will deny you before the Father. What did Peter do? Denied him. It's not thin ice. This is serious. But something, because of the way Jesus prayed for him, would survive inside Peter, which Jesus could use to pull Peter back to himself again. And that is what Jesus prayed for. And that is what Jesus got. There's an important lesson here for us to learn from all this. I want you to understand this. This is really important. You do not sustain your walk with Christ. You don't. He does. Jesus Christ sustains your walk with him. The only reason that faith inside you does not snap is because he sustains you. Peter tried to do it. He even cut off somebody's ear that night, didn't he? He declared, I'm not going to deny you, but he did. He couldn't do it, and Jesus is what pulled Peter through. Jesus is what pulls you through when you fail too. He pulls you through. You're not strong enough to sustain your relationship with Christ. It is all 100% him. So number 4, the point we see in there is Peter would come back. Peter would come back. Jesus didn't say, if you come back. Looking at verse 32 again, what does he say? When you come back. He gave Peter this hope to hold on to. You're coming back, Peter. You're going through this darkest hour of your life, but you are coming back. I know you're going to fail me tonight, Peter. You're going to do it. I know that you are coming back to me. There was no doubt. Jesus would let Peter fall, but he would not let him fall away. Number 5, even this failure would be something that God would use in the life and the ministry of Peter from that day forward. That is hard medicine. Even the failure, the lowest part in his life, would shape his ministry from that day forward. I think it partially made him who he became after this. I think this failure transformed Peter's life. Do you think there was any self-righteousness left in Peter after this? Do you think there was any pride left in Peter? The great powerhouse for God, the first one out of the boat, the first one to open his mouth. I don't think that probably happened as much after that. You know, this is a really fascinating thing, but you know, the failures that we see of these men in the New Testament, in the Gospels, are evidence of the truth of them. Why else would you have put that in there? If you were conning the world and you just wanted everybody to follow you and say, hey, I'm Peter, come with me, I've got this new thing, just give me your money and come along, you wouldn't put this stuff in there. Right. It's so honest. Sometimes the dents and the scrapes in our armor may be the very things that encourage the one next to us who is in battle at the moment. Seeing our failure and how God has restored us can encourage those around us. I love this from A.W. Tozer, back toward the early part of the 20th century. He wrote this, and I love this. He said, ours might be the silence of the untried soldier in the presence of the battle-hardened heroes who have fought the fight and won the victory and who have the scars to prove that they were present when the battle was joined. The devil things and people being what they are, it is necessary for God to use the hammer, the file, and the furnace in his holy work of preparing a saint for true sainthood. It is doubtful whether God can bless a man greatly until he has hurt him deeply. So many times God allows these things to happen to us to chip away at our hard hearts and knock off the sharp corners. I know myself, I am a better pastor because of failures in my past, because I've done things and I hurt people or I did something like that, and I'm not going to go through the litany, and I'm ashamed of them and I keep them, I hate them, but there are things, and there's time when I did the wrong thing and maybe it hurt somebody, and I learn from that what is really important, and it takes those sharp corners off, and we learn and we grow by our failures that way. Once Peter came back around, he was to pick himself up and get his bearings, Jesus says, and help the other 10 who have just fallen too. And of course, you know the story. Jesus gave him the details right there. If you just look at verse 34, Jesus said, I tell you, Peter, the rooster will not crow to this day until you deny me 3 times. You deny 3 times that you knew me. I mean, it's late in the night. The morning's coming. Peter, you're running out of time. The rooster's going to crow, and in that time you will deny me 3 times. Not just once, but 3 times. I've stood there in the courtyard outside the house of Caiaphas where this happened. And the main one, Caiaphas was the main one to condemn Jesus that night. And that's where Peter was warming himself by a fire. You're there. And when they all started coming to him and coming up to him and saying, weren't you one of his disciples? Weren't you with Jesus? Peter denied it. 3 times. Look down just at verse, right there in the same chapter, Luke 22, down at verses 60 through 62, getting towards the end of this, look how bad it got. Peter said to the man, this person who was accusing him of being with Jesus, man, I do not know him. I do not know what you're talking about. Immediately while he was still speaking, the rooster crowed. And the Lord turned and looked at Peter. And Peter remembered the saying of the Lord, how he had said to him, before the rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and wept bitterly. Can you imagine what Peter felt inside? When he blurted out those words, I do not know him. And he looks up and they're taking Jesus from one beating to another, and they lock eyes. And the rooster crows. He had failed. He denied he even knew the one he had just pledged his very life to. He folded like a house of cards. It was just that quick. A little bit of pressure and he's done. And we don't hear from Peter again until Sunday morning comes around. It's very quiet after he runs out weeping. It's no wonder when Sunday morning arrived and Peter and John were racing to the tomb after Mary had told them about it. It says John stopped and he stooped and he looked inside the tomb. And you remember what Peter did? Because John got there first. He ran right past him. No slowing down. I have got to get there. I have got to know. I have got to see with my eyes that this tomb is empty. That all these things he said are really true. I've got to know. I've failed him. I've got to see if this is true. Good news is Jesus hadn't given up on Peter. Jesus came to Peter 100 miles away. Peter had left. He wasn't in Jerusalem anymore. He went 100 miles away, and it's a 4 to 6 day walk. I'm sure Jesus had no problem with that. After he was resurrected, he could just be there like that. But Peter and the disciples who followed him, and that's who they were following, always the leader, even if it's the wrong direction, were fishing. They had fished all night because that's when you fish, and they caught nothing. Look at John 21:3. That's where we are. It says, Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. And I don't think he meant for the afternoon. They said to him, we will come with you, always following. And they went and got into a boat, and that night they caught nothing. When you walk away from God, don't expect him to bless it. He wasn't going to fill the nets with fish at that time, not encourage them to keep going that way. But the sun came up after they fished all night, and there was someone standing on the shore. There was some back and forth that should have reminded Peter of a day when he first met Jesus, and he was on a fishing boat and had caught nothing, and suddenly it dawns on John, I don't know, maybe Peter was so grief-stricken. Grief does mess with your thinking, it really does, and so Peter wasn't necessarily noticing what's going on here, but John says to him in verse 7 there, it says, "It's the Lord. It's the Lord." Look at, if you're there and look at verse 7, it says, "Therefore that disciple whom Jesus loved," there's his nickname again, "said to Peter, 'It's the Lord.'" And look at this. So when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he had stripped for work, and threw himself into the sea. I think it's very plain out, just a lot like the tomb here, because Peter couldn't even wait for the boat to get to shore. He put on his clothes because he had stripped down for work. He was out in the boat naked with the bros, and I don't like to fish that way, I don't know. But had gone right back to the rude and crude fisherman he used to be. I think that's what it's showing us. Any refinement he'd gained in 3 years with Jesus, gone. And he's out in the boat with his brothers like that. And so his first instinct was to cover up when he realized it was Jesus. And because, honestly, why would you put your coat on before you jump in the water? It's going to get all wet and just drag you down, right? So we know he was covering his shame. And I love that John writes there that Peter threw himself into the sea. This was not a swan dive. There was no dignity here. He just threw himself into the sea. He couldn't wait for everyone else to get to shore before he could see Jesus. So covering his shame, he jumped into the water and he swam to the one who could remove his shame forever. Take away the things that had just happened. And they're gone. And that's what Jesus was there to offer him. He had failed. But that thin thread of his faith had held. He knew, I've got to get to Jesus. Although it wasn't much, since he went back to his old way of life, it was enough. It was enough to get him back to Jesus. And Jesus would use that fine thread of the faith that was left because he had prayed for it to be sustained in Peter, and he would reel that fisherman back in with it. And he was restored. Peter would fail again. Now, let's not miss this. Peter would fail again. Nothing like the one we just read. That's like the big one here. This is his big failure right here. But, we still fail. The thing is, our failures should get smaller, and they should get further apart the longer we walk with the Lord. But they still come. I mean, we read about the barbecue incident in the book of Galatians where Peter learned just how good pork really is, but was hiding it from the other apostles when they came around, and Paul had to rebuke him for it because it was hypocrisy. But it's pork. It's really good. But every time, his faith would hold. Every time. That string would not snap, no matter how it stretched. And when he stood before the emperor of the world, Nero, he would not deny Jesus, but proclaim him. And at that point, he was at such a point, he came to the point, even the tradition tells us, that he would be crucified upside down because he didn't count himself worthy to die like his Savior did. Where he once denied him, he proclaimed him before the most powerful man in the world. I'm sorry, but you're going to fail. Someday, some way. Hopefully they're not all big ones like this one of Peter's, and you're not going to fail at everything, but you are going to fail. And they should get fewer and fewer, and they should get further apart as we go closer to Jesus, as we spend more time with him. But it still happens. I mean, you can feel a lot of shame when you snap at your wife and turn around and see your kids crying, Stuff like that. And sometime you're going to let Jesus down. You're going to let your family down. You're going to let yourself down. Really boosting your self-image today, aren't I? It's not one of those feel-good sermons. There'll be times you will swear up and down that you will never do a thing, and then you will find yourself there, eye to eye with Jesus, and it'll break your heart. But that will not be your end. That's where it goes. That will not be your end. As long as you have truly trusted, and I don't mean you just said a prayer when you were 3 or something like that, and maybe that did, I was 4, it worked for me, but it doesn't for everybody. But if you have truly, truly trusted yourself and your eternal soul to Jesus, He will pull you through. He is praying for you day and night, night and day. He is rebuking Satan on your behalf, day and night, night and day, saying, I paid for that. You have nothing to say here. The Lord rebuke you, Satan. And if that is his prayer, that your faith will not fail, guess what? It will not fail. Your faith will not fail. It may be stretched, it may be strained, it may be just a little ember left, but it will not break because you do not sustain your faith. Who does? Jesus sustains your faith in Jesus. He does it. And when you've come back to Him, not if, but when you have come back to Him, He will use you, scars and all, to help your brothers and sisters who are struggling with the same things you do. Just feels like a good time to jump out of the boat and swim to Jesus, doesn't it?